Wonderful. Thank you for joining today and joining us on this evening, especially those who are here from abroad. So really appreciate you joining us tonight. So to introduce ourselves, I am Urvina Shah and this is Anjali Gudka, and we have a company called Ukan Coaching, which is UKAN, just to be clear. Really excited you're all joining us today, and we're going to be talking about breaking free from career complacency. Now, we've said hellos and know now where you're from, so fantastic. So just to add a little bit, some of you may have heard us talk on Facebook, on Ashwal Connect, about our stories, but just to briefly also, for those of you who haven't, do check that out. But also just to say, so I am Ravina, I'm a mother of three, and I worked in the NHS for 27 years as a therapeutic radiographer. I absolutely loved that job. The last 15 years of that was as what's called a practice educator. So I educated and trained staff and also helped with career development and personal development within the radiotherapy setting for both staff and students. So that's essentially what my career journey was pre-UCAN coaching, and we'll come back to that later.
Okay, and same with me. I'd put a little bit about my story in the video that I'd done a couple of days ago. But I've been a finance professional in the corporate sector for almost 17 years. And I'm also a very passionate badminton player and coach, which led me to pursue transformation coaching both on and off the court. So we're just going to run through very quickly what the next 20 to 30 minutes is going to look like. So we're going to cover what career complacency is. We're going to also then discover how you can recognize or identify whether you are complacent in your career, and then some steps that you can take to start breaking free from that complacency. And Urvina and I are all about engagement, interaction. So feel free to put in your comments, any questions that you have in the chat. And if we'll come to them as we go along. And there will be a Q&A session at the end as well. So feel free to also make a note of any questions that come up for you, and we're happy to take those as well. So let us get started. Okay, exciting. So we're going to start with 2 questions. First question is, type a yes or a no in the chat for us if you have been feeling that you're too comfortable in your current job. So just type a yes or a no if you're feeling too comfortable in your current job. Okay. Excellent. We're getting a mix already. And whilst you are typing those in for us, oh, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Excellent. So if you are typing in right now, that's great. The second question is, put a 1 in the chat if you've had no progress in your career in the last few years. Put a 1 if you've had no progress in your career in the last few years. Okay, so there's a few. So it's a nice mix, and that's always great. We love it. We love it. Keep them coming. So keep coming, keep putting in your responses in the chat. So let's talk about what is career complacency. So this is when you are overly comfortable in your job or your career and are probably even a little bit apathetic towards your own career development. So what does that even mean? Now, it means that you're not actively seeking any new opportunities or acquiring any new skills. And that's because you're just so comfortable in the work that you're doing. So you're not inclined to do anything about it, or because it's too much effort, or you are just not bothered. And you have a job, so it's all okay. But here's the impact of being complacent in your career. Over a longer period of time, it leads to decreased job satisfaction. And that's because the work that you're doing is constantly the same, but you start not having any progress in your career. And then that leads to you starting to undervalue your abilities. And then you start missing out on opportunities, which then has the effect of creating a lack of enthusiasm for the work that you're doing. And it becomes this vicious negative spiral where you have reduced performance and you're even forcing yourself to go to work. And as a result, over that period of time, your earning potential also decreases. And worse still, that apathy at work comes home with you. So now it's starting to impact your non-work life and your relationships. So research has shown that complacency actually leads to about 37% of higher absenteeism at work and 18% of lower productivity. And we see a lot of people who seem to have convinced themselves that it's better to stay on in that job or role that they're in, even if they're complacent, because of the stability and the financial security. Mm-hmm. And they're not wrong in the current economic climate, right? It makes sense. Whilst there are people who are losing their jobs, at least you have a job that will help you pay the bills.
But here's the thing. See, we live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. And technology is advancing so rapidly that the way we are working also is changing rapidly. Now, what was the norm 15 to 20 years ago is just not relevant anymore. As organizations are adapting to the change of pace, their employees have to do the same thing. And it is especially true of those that are really just stagnant in their careers. But you see, the thing is, it's easy to take it for granted. And the pandemic and the recent poor economic conditions have shown that nothing.
Sonia talked already there.
Sorry, someone said something, missed that. Was that a question? Okay. We'll carry on. So as I was saying, the pandemic and the recent economic conditions have shown that nothing is permanent. And in fact, what job securities we used to have, which was quite the norm before, is no longer a guarantee. And it is irrespective of your age, your experience, or your qualifications. In all reality, no one can afford to be complacent anymore. In fact, it is also known as the silent career killer. So don't let it steal your ambition or dull your potential. Now, you may have heard of a chap called Tony Robbins. Now, if those of you who haven't, he's a motivational speaker, very famous, and a coach. And he says, and you actually may want to write this down, if you are not growing, you are dying. Okay, that's a bit extreme, but you know what I mean. So you've got to keep pushing your limits. That's where you and your career grows. Now, in 2022, a survey was done in the USA by a payroll company called ADP, and they found that people who switched jobs had on average 2% increase in their average wage growth compared to those who stuck around in their jobs. And there's a similar pattern in the UK. This actually story comes to mind when I talk about all of this. So we had a client named Veena. Now, Veena was an accountant, or still is actually, she's an accountant, and she had worked in the same organization for 27 years. Now, initially, she had worked her way up that ladder and had gotten to senior manager position. But following that, she wanted to get to the directorship role, but it was such a struggle. No matter what she did, no matter what she was told to do and change, nothing changed for her. She just wasn't getting that role. Even though she really enjoyed what she was doing, and she was really good at it. And after many years of having the same conversations and performance appraisals, she even gave up trying to get that promotion because it was just not happening. And what happened was that, actually, you might be wondering, why is it that she never just picked up and moved or looked for another job. You see, the thing was, she had a family to support. It was convenient, it was flexible, it was in a really good location for her, and the money was great. But over the years, younger people surpassed her. And she was finding that, in her words, this new breed had a different set of values and ethos of working than her. This was really making her unhappy. But by now, she had completely lost the courage to make any changes or even move in her career. She then grew despondent and demotivated, but she had realized she had become complacent, and it had cost her both emotionally and physically. The stress of all of that caused her to have a heart attack. Now, that was her wake-up call, because she realized that not only was she affected, but the people around her were affected too. And that's who she was doing all this for. So through working with us, we looking at changing her mindset, what she wanted out of her career, reignited her passion, and rebuilt her confidence. And in fact, today, she is working in a completely different industry, got her promotion, has lots of autonomy, and absolutely loves what she does all over again. Now, just if you resonate with any part of that story, what we've said so far, just type 1 in the chat if it does resonate with you, any of that, just to show us, to get a sense of where you are at.
Okay.
Ooh, we have quietened down there. Oh yes, they're coming through now. Maybe it was just a delayed reaction.
Okay, 1. Okay, yeah. There's quite a few ones. That's
You're in the right place then.
Okay, so keep them coming. Please keep engaging. So if you are resonating with this, if you have been there, then type a 1 in the chat just so we get a sense of it as well, and we can make sure that this is relevant to what we're talking about and what you want as well. So whilst those are rolling in, how do you know if you are becoming complacent? Okay, now this is not very easy. So what we've got is 4 main aspects that you can look at and you can focus on. So what we say is spend some time, set aside some time, be by yourself, reflect on your current job along these 4 aspects. Now, the first aspect is motivation and engagement, which is pretty much, how do you feel about your work? Is it boring? Is it the same old every day? Do you dread going into work? So think about what you're feeling about your work. So that's the first one, your motivation and your engagement. Because if you're not motivated, if you're not engaged at work, if you can't be bothered to do that work, then these are some of the signs that you may be getting to that complacency. The second aspect is professional development. Are you learning new things? Are you improving your performance? Or is it that you've decided you don't need to learn because your experience is enough and you're happy with the mediocre performance because it's just too much to go above and beyond? In other words, it could also be considered quiet quitting, that you're not willing to go above and beyond. Okay, so those are the first 2. The third one is job satisfaction. Now, here we're talking about what's your attitude towards your work. Are you resisting any change? Do you get irritated when certain things are just the way they are, nothing's changing, and you're a bit cynical? So what is your attitude at work? How are you behaving at work? So that's the third aspect. And then the fourth aspect is about your growth. So here we're literally talking about, are you looking for those new opportunities? Or do you just go, someone else will do it? I really don't have time for this kind of work right now. I'm too busy. Or have you expanded your network recently? Or is it just the same as what you've had over the last few years? So these are the four main aspects to look at in terms of just recognizing whether you're complacent in your career. Now, we're not going into too much detail with this because what we have got for you guys is a free career assessment template that you can download for free, and you can go through it in your own time just to answer those questions. It's very simple. It's very high level, but it starts giving you an idea of whether you are becoming complacent in your career. And that link is in the chat right now. So make sure you grab that link and download that template. It will start giving you at least a sense of whether you are heading towards complacency or not. So as I mentioned, it is difficult to identify whether you're becoming complacent because it's something that is building up over time. And so this assessment is just a guide to kind of point you in that right direction. And I'm going to caveat this. We all go through those occasional bad days where we just can't be bothered to do any work. And that's not what we're talking about here when we talk about complacency. It's if you've been feeling that way, in that negative way about your work for a long enough duration, that's when you need to start considering whether you are complacent or not and doing something about it. Okay. So the other thing about career complacency, it can affect anyone at any time because it is a slow buildup. It can creep up on you, and it can also impact famous people. So everyone hopefully knows of Michelle Obama, right?
Yes, you do, I'm sure.
So if you do know Michelle Obama, then type a 2 in the chat for us if you've heard of her. Some of you may also know her story if you have read her book. This is not a plug for her, but it is a good book. So
First one, Becoming.
Yeah. Now, Michelle's story goes that she spent her early career working as a corporate lawyer, and she was actually on track to become a partner in her late 20s. And despite this financial stability and even the prestige of getting to that position at that age, she was really unhappy in her career. And she felt that she ticked all those boxes that were expected of her from society, from her friends, from her family. But she just didn't feel that she was cut out to be a corporate lawyer. But she stayed on because her mom's advice to her at that time was focus on earning money before you start focusing on your happiness. Now that sounds a little bit familiar, doesn't it? So it wasn't until Michelle's father and her best friend passed away that Michelle realized she needed to do something different because she didn't want to be remembered as a corporate lawyer. So she started looking at what her options were as a qualified lawyer who didn't want to practice law. And she ended up getting a job in her city hall in Chicago, where she's from, which was a little bit more aligned to what she wanted to do. So in all these stories that you've heard, both Urvina and my story that we put earlier last week and the week before on the Oshawa Connect Facebook group, and if you haven't seen them, then do go and check them out. Our stories are on there about how we were career complacent, but also what you've heard about Veena and Michelle. There was different forms of career complacency in all of these stories. And the thing that changed was these trigger points that then led all of us to take a different step in our career journey.
So what we're essentially saying is that trigger point often happens at a later point, and we want you to recognize that before it gets to the point a lot earlier. So in fact, what can you do to break free from career complacency? I'm going to give you 3 points here. The first one is set clear goals and create a plan for it. Now, as boring and cliched as that sounds, whether you brainstorm or visualize or put it down on paper, that alone triggers the brain to create this positivity and motivation. So really important to do, whether you feel it's a bit woo-woo or not. Expand your network. We've talked a little bit about that already. So actively seek the professionals in your industry to connect with and build those relationships, because this will also give you a flavor of what is going on out there, what is new in your industry. And if you need to switch jobs or anything, you know people to connect with, and that part, it is so important, even especially in this day and age where everything is electronically driven. And find mentors who can help you move up that ladder a little bit more quickly. And lastly, engage in continuous learning. Now, we are living in an AI age, so everything is driving very, very quickly. Identify the skills you need. Invest in yourself to develop so that you don't become obsolete in your field. Now, is everyone getting this? Type 3 in the chat if you are. That makes sense?
We love our numbers.
Well,
we're
she's the
also,
accountant.
we're also testing whether you're keeping up. So type a 3 if you're keeping up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, brilliant.
Ah, brilliant.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for engaging, and we love it. We love it. We love it. Okay, so the next bit is we're going to stop here because we've given a lot of information and we want to hear from you. Do you have any questions or any comments about your career complacency or your journey that we can help you with right now? So you can unmute yourselves. Feel free to unmute yourselves and just ask your question, or raise your virtual hand. I think there's something in Zoom that you can raise your virtual hand, and we can go through your questions. Now's your time. We are happy to answer any of your questions. So please feel free.
You just need to rest our voices for just a little bit. Over to you guys.
Any questions? Oh,
okay, Vinod, what's your question? You can unmute or type in the chat.
You're not done your presentation yet, right?
This
you
is
still
all,
have more to see.
we
You
have a
still
little
have
bit
go
more.
for it. Go for
We
it.
have a little bit more.
Yeah,
Go for it.
No, I just have the parting comments. So, if you're done with your presentation, then I can put my comments in.
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So far, everything is very nicely presented. I'll just add a couple of more points to the career complacency. And one is your career, you will have your colleagues badmouth you because they want to advance their careers. So you may run into that, and that may cause you to, think about moving on somewhere. That's the first point. And second point is, I think, Urvina, you mentioned, and this comes at around the age of 55. And the reason I say that is normally, I don't know if it is same in UK or not, but in Canada, 55, 65 is the retirement age, not forced though. But 10 years before that, which is the age of 55, is when your company's contribution towards your retirement start increasing exponentially. And this is when the companies decide to let you go free. Okay, so this is like one other part of the economic reality that you will face in your career as well.
Yeah.
And the reason I joined this call is not to actually looking for a career change or anything. I'm already into my 4th inning already. So
that's brilliant.
way past my retirement age. But like I told Bunty the other day, that my mind still doesn't want to accept that I'm way past my retirement age. So 2 more points I would like to add. You mentioned career change. I trained to be a chemical engineer from United States back in 1971. And at that time, it was tough to get into chemical engineering. So my minor was computer science, and I chose that career instead of engineering. And since then, I've been employed with IT companies, different industries. but that was the career change that I needed at that time. And then you also mentioned the continuous improvement. IT is one of the fields that, there's always something new coming up.
Yeah.
So that's what I would like to add. And the final point, I don't want to take too much time. Final point is keep active to keep your mind active and do what you enjoy doing. So I will just stop there. Okay. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. And thank you for
Yeah.
all those really
Yeah.
valid points. And for all the rest of you, there you have a veteran there who has been there, who has done that, who has experienced it, and giving some wonderful advice there. In terms of your first point about people leaving because of other colleagues, or that is often the case. People don't leave because of the work. They may leave because of how people have treated them. So, I mean, it doesn't quite relate to career complacency unless it has really affected you and you end up staying there because of that. But people do leave because of colleagues as well. So, yeah, very valid point.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. We will move on. Some others have got some questions as well. Thank you, Vinod, very much for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got one here. I'm in my early career and have way too many options. How to narrow down?
Aren't you the lucky one then? Is what I would say. No, you're right. Actually, I think for young people these days, there are a plethora of options. And one of the things that we do is really work with people in terms of finding out what is really important to them and what do they want that career to look like. And when you hone down what is important to you and whether those options are out there, you can hone down even more. So options are great in many ways because it does allow you to really select. You have the opportunity to select what is really important to you. So that's what I would say. Obviously, in this setting, we can't do that sort of work. But what I would suggest is just look at what is really important to you and look at your options and see what matches.
Make sure it's aligned. That's the important thing. Are all your options aligning to what you want out of your career? And if it's not, then automatically you know which choices to go for. So hopefully that gives you a flavor. Any other questions? Otherwise, we have some. Okay, so the one that we come across, so we get a lot of these questions as well, and we're just going to go through at least one of them. So the one question that we get, okay, we got another one before I go on to mine. Can complacency also be due to lack of self-confidence or self-belief? For example, not changing or going for a new role or promotion because you don't think you can. That is often the case. There are a lot more things in play than just your self-confidence and your belief, but belief and self-confidence definitely plays a massive role when it comes to your staying in one place. And a lot of it was part of my story as well, Smita, which we put out on the Facebook group earlier, is at some point you just lose that self-confidence and that belief. And so you just start ticking along. You're like, I just want to keep doing the same work. I want to come in, do my work, get paid, and I want to leave. I'm not going to do anything about it, and I'm not going to go above and beyond. I'm just going to do what's required of me. And that certainly then what happens is it's again just a circle, right? You don't do the work, so you start losing your confidence, then you start believing that you're not good enough, and then all of a sudden you actually aren't good enough because you've believed you aren't good enough. And it does become that cycle. And I know it took me a very long time to get out of it, and that was my phase of the career complacency. And Ravina's been through something similar. So yes, absolutely agree with you. That does contribute to it. The one other question I'm just going to put out there is, in terms of the complacency, is something similar to, I've been in my career for such a long time. I've been in the same company for such a long time. Is it such a bad thing? And I think the answer is yes and no. So what we're looking at is, if you've been in the same organization for say 8, 10, 12, 20 years, if you look at even just 8, 9 years ago, that was really commendable. People were looking for that kind of loyalty because it showed that you were reliable. It showed that, you know, you were willing to go that extra mile. But in recent times, what we're seeing is that that can actually work against you, because it's also showing that you're not upskilling, or you're not looking at other opportunities, or you might not be broad enough in your experience. It also depends on what industry you are and what the norm or expectation is from your industry. But if we look at just generally, then the guidance at the moment is about 5 years. If you stayed in the same role or the same organization for about 5 years, then that's a good enough time to consider doing something different, so that you can show that you're versatile, that you can do different things. And that's one of the most common ones that we get. And this is what's now changing. This is a different era at the moment for careers. And this is one of the big changes that we're seeing, where that longevity is not something that is rated as much anymore.
Yeah, and as Vinod has pointed out, loyalty rarely pays. And he's completely right in that at the moment. That no longer applies when it did used to so many years ago.
Yeah.
So right, we're going to come up to the end and start wrapping up. So
Yeah.
really overall, what we're trying to say, somebody's just said, also perceptions play a big part. People tend to underestimate your capabilities. You may continue there.
Yeah, when you snap out of that negativity, go on a secondment, work with different people, they see someone more capable, and your self-worth proves that's right. So you can stay in the same organization, but as long as you can demonstrate that you have been progressing, or you've been doing different things, then that actually works. And the secondment is a great way to doing it.
You're right, Sheetal. COVID is a factor for one being in the same place for more than 5 years.
5 years.
Absolutely. And I
Absolutely.
think that when employers look at that, I think that's taken into consideration, because a lot of people either ended up just staying there or move out completely. We saw something called the Great Resignation during COVID, where
just after COVID.
As soon as COVID, where so many people left the professions because they realized it wasn't the right place for them.
Yeah.
It really opened up their eyes. So yes, you're quite right.
Yeah.
Now, just to conclude overall, is that, you know, being complacent in your career at the moment in time is no longer an option. And we all know that the retirement age is increasing. So it has become a necessity to grow and develop. And as Tony Robbins also said, you're then dying. And you need to do that to remain employable. Now, so why don't wait to get to that point, those trigger points like Veena and Michelle, and be forced out of your comfort zone, because that's even more uncomfortable than when you take control of the steps of getting out of your comfort zone. Be prepared, have a plan, and as soon as you break free from complacency, you will discover limitless possibilities. And trust me, I should know, after being in a career for 27 years and then moving out, I didn't even know what this world had to offer. So go and do it.
Okay, so at this point, you may also be wondering, okay, what next? Now, if you are unsure of which direction to take your career in, then we've got our free virtual Career Clarity Masterclass, which runs on the 10th of October at 8 p.m. BST. It's virtual and it's open to anyone globally who can join in at that time. And what we're going to do in that is we're going to cover in a little bit more detail how you can get unstuck if you are stuck in your career. The link to register is in the chat in a bit. You should see it in a bit. So there's a link to register in the chat. So if you are struggling in your career, if you feel you're stuck and you just want to kind of move out of that, then join us on that. Do join us on that masterclass. And also just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, do download that assessment to work out whether you are complacent or not. It will really help you. It will guide you. At least it gives you a starting point to work out whether you need to do something about it or not. And also we are available on Facebook. So if you can't make it for the masterclass, or you want to just talk to us a bit sooner than that, then feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help you, the Oshwell Connect members. And finally, it has been amazing to have you, so many of you on here engaging, asking your questions. You have been awesome. And we'd just like to especially thank the Oshwell Connect team for really giving us this opportunity. So we're looking to hopefully, if this was worth it, then hopefully we can do a few more of these. So watch out for those in the near future. And we'd really appreciate your support and the fact that you are here today.
Thank you, Sital, for your comment there. Actually, I'm glad it managed to uplift you and in this evening, and hopefully you'll have a wonderful rest of the week. I'm just trying to read some of the comments that are coming through. Yeah, thank you as well from me to the Oshwell Connect team, Bunty and Chaitan.
Yeah, thank you
Very
so much.
appreciative of this opportunity here.
And for those of you who were expecting it on Facebook Live, I know Bunty and Chetan are going to do something about it and probably put a recording up at some point. So due to the tech issues, so if there are any questions off the back of that, then we're happy to take them in the group as well. Okay, brilliant. So make sure you make use of the templates. Do register for the masterclass if it's something that will help you.
Share it with your friends too,
Yeah.
or anyone you feel might need that support and in fact that guidance as well. It's free. It's only an hour of your time.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and have a good
Thank you
rest
very
of the
much.
evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Or day, wherever you are.
Yeah.